Hello, good evening. I would like to share with you some of the wonderful things that my husband, Dr. Barry, who's out there somewhere, and I have learned from our experience in working with many people over the last 15 years together. And the things, ironically, that we found actually the most valuable in the healing work that we do, we did not learn in chiropractic school. In chiropractic school, we learned the names of every bone, muscle, joint, nerve, blood vessel, how the body works, how to adjust the spine. But for some reason, they left out the class, the mind-body connection. They left out the class, health and stress. And they left out the class, how does your life affect your body? And if you are having symptoms or issues in your body, is your body trying to tell you something? They missed that as an elective. So when we got into practice, we thought we were armed with all the tools that we would need. And we found very quickly in the real world that as a person came into the office and they sat down before us, and of course first they tell you where they're hurting, and then as you ask more questions and you begin to have a dialogue with them, they start to tell you their story. And for most people, they have some intuitive way of telling you the things that you need to know that are relative to what's happening in their body, and they might not even realize it as they're telling you. They might be telling you about how they got divorced 6 months ago, or how they're going through some challenging thing with their job. Maybe they lost their job, or maybe they had a trauma in childhood, or issues going through school that somehow are still stuck in their body. As we heard from Jackie a couple of speakers ago, how when she was pushing herself too fast, what happened? Her body began to break down. So as we were learning from our experience how life, experience, and consciousness is impacting health and the body and the healing process, we started to go on a journey ourselves of searching for, wow, what are we going to do with this information? How do we use this? How do we apply this in this profession that we're in? We're not psychologists. We can't, sit and talk with people for an hour. We're going to put our hands on them. So what do we do? So we began to explore various techniques that utilize touch in such a way that there is an essence of communication that allows the person that we're working on, as well as ourselves, actually, to go into a different state of consciousness. And in that state of consciousness, that is where the healing takes place. So when we are using our hands on people, we are sending a message, and it's a message that really all of us, in essence, are looking for. And other speakers have touched on this tonight. And the message is, I see you, I'm with you, and I accept you, and you are safe being with me and together in this space. So what happens when anybody gets this message, and you could get this message from the way someone's talking to you, the way they're looking at you, obviously the way they're touching you, when you get this kind of message from someone, what happens to you is that you begin to relax. And you relax, and you relax, and if you're laying on a table with a fountain and music, and you relax so deeply that people tend to slip into a space of consciousness that is below the place of the thinking mind. So the thinking mind is where most of us live most of the time. And other speakers have talked about this also, that the human doing machines that we are mostly run by the gerbil going around and around and around up here. And if you're not familiar with that, try meditating. Try meditating for 5 minutes and trying to silence your mind and see what happens. Well, I recently went on a 7-day silent meditation retreat, and I found that within the first 40-minute meditation, I was ready to jump out of my skin because it became completely obvious that I had absolutely no control over what was going on in there. It's a perpetual motion machine that is either thinking about the past, projecting into the future, and creating a running commentary on everything that you see, hear, think about. You know, it's like a movie, when you see a movie where, you know, you have the visuals and then you have the dialogue and the background sounds, and then you have a narrator. And the narrator's voice is there through the movie, making judgments and coming to conclusions and directing you as to how to perceive what it is that's going on. Well, we all have our, probably more than one. You know, maybe we have a nice narrator, we have a mean narrator, but the narrator is always going. So what we have discovered in our experience is that if you can allow yourself, if we can allow ourselves through a variety of experiences that we might choose to have, whether it's, you know, taking a yoga class or working on meditation or dancing or praying or whatever it is that takes us out, takes us off of the treadmill and into an inner space where we can start to feel more deeply our center and who we are, that a global experience of healing takes place that really goes beyond just the physical body. So I want to tell you, share with you a couple of experiences. One is from a woman who was in our practice and came in one day, and her neck, she'd been under care for a while, and at that point she was kind of under wellness care, so she wasn't having any specific pain. But she came in one day and her neck was so painful. She said, I don't know what happened. I just woke up and it was like this, and I can't move my head. It's like a searing pain. So I did my thing, and she didn't feel any better at the end. And I said, come back tomorrow. And we did it again, and she still didn't feel any better. So by the third and the fourth day, I was starting to get concerned. And I thought, well, maybe she should have an MRI. Maybe she herniated a disc or something. You know, this isn't my usual experience with people. But she was insistent that she hadn't done anything to physically injure herself. So by the fifth visit that week, I was kind of at a loss. I was feeling at the end of my professional rope, and so I just kind of surrendered, and I stood there, and she was laying on the table, and I just put my hands on her and I closed my eyes. And I said, please, somebody help me. And what happened was I allowed myself to just be as present as I could with her in that moment, and I started to feel emotionally this sense of overwhelming sadness, like a grief as if someone had just died. And I said to her, are you sad about something? Did you lose someone recently? And she said, oh, my grandmother died last week. And I said, oh, my gosh, she hadn't told me. And so I was talking with her a little bit about her grandmother and this loss. And she said, you know what I've been thinking about? I had this experience with my grandmother when I was a teenager, and I did something that I was ashamed of. I felt I let her down in a certain way, and I had never talked about it with her. And I never really resolved it. And all of these years, this woman was in her late 40s. She said, all these years I've been holding on to this. And I don't think of it often, but somehow when she died last week, it came up so strongly, my feeling of regret, that I had never apologized and I had never had a discussion with her about it. And so we had a few extra minutes together, and so we just did a little process where I had her just say, as if her grandmother was there, the things that she wanted to say to her grandmother. And she did this, and she cried, and she let out a lot that she'd been holding in. And she sat up at the end and she said, oh, my neck doesn't hurt anymore. I said, wow, that's amazing. All that pain in your neck that felt so physical was really here, but it was just showing up here. So we can, our bodies can be holding or expressing a variety of things to us, and sometimes our bodies want to tell us something. So our consciousness, our bodies can actually have a consciousness all their own. And I had an experience myself about a year ago where I have been a dancer in my life, and so I was in a dance class and I did some movement, and my lower back went into spasm. So this is actually a nightmare experience for a chiropractor because the last thing you want your patients to see is you coming into your office like this. So I left my dance class and I did hobble into my office where, thank God, my husband was there adjusting people. And I got onto the table, and while he was working on me, because of the understanding that I have about consciousness and the body and healing, I took a little journey inside myself to my lower back, and I asked my lower back, are you trying to tell me something? Is there something that you want me to know? What are you feeling? And then I was quiet, and then I heard, or the thought response came into my mind, and it was very simple, and it said, you're pushing too hard and you're moving too fast. And that's all it said. And I just let that go over in my mind. You're pushing too hard and you're moving too fast. And that really started me on a journey of healing myself that I am still very much on in exploring. What is it? Why is it that I'm pushing myself too hard? And why am I moving too fast? What am I running away from? What's going on inside of me that is not letting me slow down? What happens if I were to just be? And sometimes it's really hard to just be and to let go of the motion and to let go of the mind. And what I realized for myself that I'd really like to share with you, because one thing I've learned in my journey is that if I ever feel or experience something, I can be absolutely certain that many other people have or will experience the same thing or be on that same learning journey. And so I realized that slowing down and letting go of the push, which is the control part, the trying to control everything, that letting go of the control and letting go of the rush and the speed has to do with a level of surrender and trust, almost like, you know that trust game where you just go like that and hopefully someone's behind you to catch you? Well, in this type of consciousness, what's involved is that kind of falling, but you have to trust that life or the river of life or spirit or whatever it is going to be there to catch you. That it's not going to be nothing. Somehow our minds think that if we let go of their busyness and instructions that we're going to fall into some like black hole of oblivion and we won't exist anymore. Well, there is another dimension of consciousness that's underneath that, that's apart from that. And the true healing journey has to do with allowing ourselves to go into a space, maybe through our body or through singing or whatever it is, where we're able to connect into that. And when that happens, we find that not only does our body usually work better in all kinds of ways, but the healing that we are all looking for will naturally unfold and evolve for us in our lives so that we will feel that connection with others. And I know in my own experience, and I can feel it shift like moment to moment, when I allow myself to go into a place where I do feel more present. If I'm with someone else, it's almost like the moment that I hit it, it's like a little gong. It's like something starts to resonate, and I feel myself expanding in some way, like the field expands. And I'm really, really lucky to be married to a man who's incredibly sensitive. And so if that happens to me, he feels it like that too. And he'll say, wow, so he gives me instant feedback. Wow, what just happened? I feel you're more present, you're different, you're here. And so when we are able to be in that space with ourselves and that opening occurs, then immediately we naturally feel a connection, a more intimate, more direct, stronger with another person or with multiple people. Or if you're in CVS or you're on the line in the grocery store, you get a sense of community. Isn't that what community really is? It's a feeling of connection. And so many people have touched on that tonight. It's a feeling of, I am part of something bigger than me, and so are you, and so is everybody, and we're all there together, even if we don't know it all the time or we don't know it most of the time. It's the truth, and that's the truth that we can trust to catch us if we just let go enough to fall into it. We can fall into that river, and we don't have to push or rush anymore and just trust the events that are unfolding in our lives. And the last thing that I'll leave you with is when we're able to do that and to go inside and really tune into ourselves, that we can be guided in the major and the minor choices and decisions that we have to make throughout our lifetime. And I have to say, as I look back in my own life, that the most important decisions that I made, what profession to enter, who to marry, where to live, whether or when to have a child, were all made not from here at all. And I spent probably a year before I met my husband interviewing couples who were married, and the longer the better, saying, but how did you know? How did you know that he was the one or she was the one? Because I was so afraid that I wouldn't know. And then I met my husband. And by the third day, I had a spiritual type of experience where I did go into a very expanded and deep state of consciousness where I absolutely knew, and it had nothing to do with thought, that this man's soul and my soul were meant to be together. And I had absolutely no fear and no doubt from that moment forward about that. And I am so glad that I trusted that sense. And it's 18 years that we're married, 20 years together. And we can each do that for ourselves in whether it's you deciding what you're going to have for lunch, or whether this job that you have or you're considering is the right job for you. That the consciousness of clarity that comes from deep inside of us and from our hearts, if we trust that, it will always help us to go in a direction where our lives will experience the greatest healing that's available. So thank you so much for your kind attention.